My wife said, "I'm already seeing someone else." Then she threatened to take my kids, my house, everything. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I turned on the cameras and collected every piece of proof, and in that moment, her face went pale. Hey dear viewers, if you enjoyed the video, you can like it and subscribe to the channel. Friday had wrung me dry before I even pulled into the driveway. One of the presses at the plant had gone down mid-run, the kind of failure that doesn't just stop a machine, but ripples through an entire operation. Engineers arguing over firmware, technicians covered in grease, orders backing up, clients calling nonstop. I'd built that printing business from nothing, poured 12 years of my life into it, and days like this reminded me how fragile everything really was. By the time I parked in the garage, I just sat there with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at nothing, trying to convince my body it was allowed to relax now. I didn't want to think. I didn't want to solve anything. I just wanted the day to end. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. Both girls were gone for the weekend. Carrie was out with her boyfriend, Robbie, and Sarah was staying over at a friend's place. That was supposed to mean Louise and I would have time. Real time. No interruptions, no schedules, no pretending everything was fine because the kids were around. Lately, she'd been distant in a way I couldn't quite name. Not angry, not cold, just absent. I'd tried to pull her back in with small things, touches, kisses, checking in, but she always seemed somewhere else, her mind already packed and gone. I poured myself a rum and coke and leaned against the counter, letting the music hum softly through the kitchen. I was replaying numbers in my head, lost revenue, payroll, deadlines, when I heard heels clicking across the tile. I looked up and felt something tighten in my chest. Louise stood there, dressed like she was stepping into a different life. Hair done, makeup perfect, outfit carefully chosen. Not casual, not comfortable, intentional. "You look nice," I said automatically. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's when I knew something was wrong. I apologized for not having the energy to go out. It felt like the polite thing to say, like normalcy. She told me she hadn't planned on me coming with her anyway. That sentence landed harder than anything she could have yelled. We didn't go out separately. Not like this. Not dressed like this. The silence between us stretched until it felt heavy enough to break. When I asked her where she was going, she hesitated just long enough to tell me everything. Her body language shifted. Her shoulders dropped. She said my name like she was bracing herself. Then she told me she'd been seeing someone. Not in a dramatic way, not even apologetically, almost practiced, as if she'd rehearsed this conversation in her head and decided how much truth to give me at once. Roger. The name alone told me it wasn't new. I didn't need details. I didn't need timelines. I knew exactly how long this had been going on just by the way she avoided my eyes. She tried to explain it as something temporary, something she needed. She said she felt stuck, that he understood her, that it wouldn't last long, that she'd come back once she figured things out. I remember laughing, but there was no humor in it, just disbelief. I told her she was justifying an affair out loud and expecting me to nod along. She said it wasn't cheating because she was being honest about it. That sentence rewired something in my brain. I realized she genuinely believed that telling me made it acceptable. When she admitted she was spending the weekend with him, something inside me went quiet. No yelling, no pleading, just a cold clarity settling in. I told her if she walked out that door, she was choosing to end our marriage. She told me I didn't have a choice. That courts favored mothers, that she could take half of everything, my business, the house, the girls. She said it calmly, like someone explaining the weather. That was the moment I stopped seeing my wife and started seeing a stranger wearing her face. I went outside because I couldn't breathe inside the house anymore. Sat on the back veranda staring at the yard we'd built memories in, trying to understand how someone could threaten to destroy you while saying they loved you. She followed me out, softer now, telling me I'd understand eventually, that this was necessary, that she'd be back. I told her she'd already left. She didn't listen. The sound of a car pulling up ended the conversation. She didn't look back when she walked away. I sat there long after the taillights disappeared, feeling hollow, like something essential had been scooped out of me without warning. When Carrie called saying she was on her way home to grab a bag she'd forgotten, I tried to sound normal. I failed. She heard it immediately. By the time she arrived, she could see something was wrong just by looking at me. I tried to protect her from the truth, but she was sharper than I gave her credit for. When she figured it out, she didn't cry. She got angry. The kind of anger that comes from loyalty breaking in half. By the time Rose and Toby showed up later that night, the story was out. Not dramatized, not softened, just the truth. I watched my daughter sit beside me, holding my hands like I was the one who might fall apart, and I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Whatever Louise thought she could take from me, she couldn't touch this. That night, after everyone finally went to bed, I checked the security footage. I didn't plan to. I just needed proof, for myself if nothing else, that I wasn't imagining what had happened. The cameras showed everything. Her confession, her leaving, another man pulling up to my house and kissing my wife before driving her away. When my phone rang later and I listened to the voicemail she and Roger left together, threats, laughter, arrogance, something shifted permanently. Fear burned out and left something harder behind. I forwarded everything to my lawyer and sat there in the dark, knowing that the marriage I'd built was over, but the fight for my life hadn't even started yet. That was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house, replaying every word she'd said, every threat, every casual justification. At some point after midnight, exhaustion finally dragged me under. But it wasn't rest. It was the kind of half-sleep where your body shuts down while your mind keeps circling the same wound. I woke before sunrise with my phone buzzing on the nightstand. Missed calls, voicemails, all from Louise. I didn't listen. Not yet. Carrie and Robbie were already up when I walked into the kitchen. They'd barely slept either. My daughter's eyes were red, but her posture was stiff, controlled, like she'd decided crying wasn't going to help anyone. Robbie brought coffee without asking. That small gesture almost broke me. We sat there quietly, the three of us drinking in silence, until Carrie finally spoke. She asked me what I was going to do next, not what I felt, not if I was okay, what I was going to do. In that moment, I realized she'd already shifted from daughter to protector. I told her the truth, that I'd spoken to a lawyer, that I wasn't going to be bullied into staying married to someone who'd already left, that no matter what happened, I wasn't going to abandon them. She nodded once, sharp and decisive, and said she was proud of me. I didn't know how badly I needed to hear that until she said it. The next few hours blurred together. Calls with attorneys, screenshots forwarded, video files uploaded. My lawyer's voice was calm, methodical, reassuring in a way I hadn't expected. He told me the threats Louise made would matter, that her admission of infidelity mattered, that the prenuptial agreement mattered more than she seemed to realize. Every time he said, "You're protected here," a little more air returned to my lungs. By mid-morning, the world cracked open in a way none of us saw coming. Rose and Toby were supposed to stop by with breakfast. When they didn't arrive, something felt wrong immediately. Then the phone call came. A police officer. Calm voice. Bad news delivered with professional distance. Toby was gone. Rose was in surgery. critical condition. Grief doesn't arrive politely. It crashes through everything else, rearranging priorities in seconds. Louise, the affair, the threats, all of it faded into the background as we rushed to the hospital. Watching Robbie hear that his father was dead was one of the hardest things I've ever witnessed. He folded in on himself, and Carrie wrapped her arms around him like muscle memory, like she'd been preparing for this her whole life. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and grief. Hours passed in waiting rooms that felt frozen in time. Doctors came and went. Words like severe, complications, and unknown floated through conversations without landing anywhere solid. When we finally saw Rose, she was alive but barely recognizable. Tubes, bandages, machines breathing for her. The absence of Toby filled the room like a physical weight. Somewhere in the middle of all that, Louise called again. I answered without thinking. Her voice was sharp, irritated, demanding to know where I was, why I wasn't home, why I was making waves. She threatened me again, told me Roger would handle me if I didn't fall in line. She had no idea what had happened, no idea someone was dead, no idea that life had shifted permanently for all of us. I hung up without explaining. I didn't have the energy to educate her on reality. When she eventually showed up at the house with Roger, the confrontation was uglier than I'd imagined. He walked in like he owned the place. Like I was an inconvenience. He talked too loudly, too confidently, the way men do when they think they're untouchable. I told them to leave. They laughed. He threatened me. Louise backed him without hesitation. That hurt more than the punch he threw a minute later. I remember the sound of my phone hitting the floor, the crack, the way my body moved before my brain caught up. I defended myself. That's the only way to describe it. Not rage. Defense. He underestimated me. People like him usually do. When it was over, he was on the ground and I was standing, breathing hard, realizing this wasn't just emotional anymore. This was dangerous. Sarah witnessed enough to know she wasn't safe around her mother anymore. When the police arrived, she handed over a recording she'd made from her room. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. She told them she was afraid, that she didn't trust her mother. That mattered. Louise was escorted out in handcuffs that night. Watching that happen felt surreal. Not victorious, not satisfying, just final. Back at the hospital, Carrie looked at the bruise forming on my face and didn't ask questions. She already knew the answers. We sat with Rose through the night. When she finally woke, the first thing she did was look at me. She didn't ask about herself. She asked if I was okay. That was Rose. Even shattered, she worried about everyone else first. The days that followed were a blur of court paperwork, hospital visits, funeral arrangements, and quiet conversations that rewrote the shape of our family. Louise tried to spin a narrative. It didn't stick. Too many people had seen the truth. Too much evidence existed. The girls stopped answering her calls entirely. When the divorce papers were served at her workplace, she lost her job the same day. Actions have a way of catching up when you least expect them. Roger's life unraveled fast. The recording destroyed his reputation. His firm cut ties. His wife found out. When you build your confidence on intimidation and secrecy, exposure is fatal. He tried to threaten me again through his lawyer. It went nowhere. Rose stayed in the hospital longer than anyone wanted. Recovery was slow, painful, uncertain. I was there every day. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we sat in silence. Sometimes we cried. Somewhere in that space, something shifted between us. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just a quiet realization that we were holding each other together in ways no one else could. One night, I dreamed of Toby. Vividly, too vividly to dismiss. He was calm, smiling, telling me things I didn't want to hear but needed to. When I woke up, My pillow was soaked with tears, and my chest felt lighter than it had in weeks. The next day, things happened exactly the way he'd said they would. Details too specific to ignore. Words only Rose could confirm. When she did, when she said the same phrase Toby had said to me in that dream, something settled into place. Grief didn't disappear, but it changed shape, became something we could carry instead of something that crushed us. By the time Louise tried to confront Rose at the hospital, it was already over. Rose stood up for herself in a way I'd never seen before. She cut Louise out completely. No yelling, no drama, just truth spoken calmly and without mercy. Louise left that room smaller than she'd entered it. I realized then that the woman I'd married was gone. In her place was someone who'd burned every bridge behind her and still believed she deserved access to the people she hurt. That chapter was closing whether she accepted it or not. And through all of it, loss, betrayal, fear, I started to see something else taking shape. Not revenge, not triumph. Something quieter, stability, honesty. The beginning of a life built on truth instead of tolerance. The storm wasn't over yet. But for the first time since Friday night, I wasn't drowning anymore. The weeks after that felt unreal, like life had slipped into a different rhythm without asking my permission. Louise didn't disappear quietly. People like her never do. She called from blocked numbers, sent emails that swung wildly between apology and accusation, left voicemails crying 1 hour and threatening lawsuits the next. I saved everything and forwarded it to my lawyer without listening more than once. I was done negotiating with chaos. The divorce process moved faster than she expected and slower than she could tolerate. The prenup she'd dismissed as just paperwork turned out to be ironclad. No claim on the business, no leverage over the house, no automatic custody assumptions. The recordings, the police report, the hospital incident, all of it painted a picture she couldn't escape. Her lawyer tried once to argue emotional distress. The judge shut it down before he finished the sentence. Infidelity combined with documented intimidation doesn't play well in court. Carrie and Sarah made their positions clear early. They didn't want contact. They weren't confused. They weren't conflicted. They were done. The court respected that. Louise cried when she realized she couldn't force access. I didn't feel satisfaction watching it. Just a quiet confirmation that boundaries, once enforced, have weight. Roger tried to crawl back into relevance by filing a civil complaint. It went nowhere. His own recording came back to haunt him. His lawyer advised him to drop it before things got worse. He listened for once. Last I heard, he was selling his house to cover legal fees and trying to reinvent himself somewhere new. Reinvention doesn't work when you carry the same character flaws with you. Rose came home from the hospital, thinner, slower, but alive. The house felt different with her back in it. Not fragile, intentional. We adjusted around her recovery without talking about it much. Meals became quieter. Nights longer. Grief doesn't leave when you ask it to. It just learns where to sit. Sometimes we talked about Toby. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes she reached for my hand without looking at me, and I understood exactly why. The business stabilized. Clients stayed. A few even expressed support once the rumors settled. Turns out integrity travels faster than gossip if you give it time. I promoted 2 people who'd stepped up during the chaos and finally took a week off without my phone glued to my hand. The first real rest I'd had in years. One evening, months later, I found myself sitting on the back veranda again, same spot where everything had cracked open. The yard looked the same. I didn't. I thought about the man I'd been that night, tired, distracted, assuming love meant endurance. I wouldn't go back to him if I could. Not because he was weak, but because he didn't know yet that respect isn't something you negotiate for. It's something you require. Louise sent one final message through her lawyer, asking if there was any chance we could talk privately. I declined. There was nothing left unsaid that mattered. Closure doesn't come from conversations with people who rewrite the past to survive the present. Carrie moved out a few months later, not out of escape but momentum. New job, new city, new life. She hugged me longer than usual when she left. Sarah stayed. She needed stability more than distance. We learned each other's routines again without Louise orbiting the house like a storm cloud. Rose healed slowly, stronger every week. One night, months after everything settled, she told me she'd had a dream about Toby too. Similar to mine. Same words, same calm certainty. We didn't overanalyze it. We didn't need to. Some things don't ask to be proven. They just sit with you, steady and quiet. The divorce finalized on a Tuesday afternoon without ceremony. I signed the papers, shook my lawyer's hand, and walked out into sunlight that felt undeservedly normal. No anger, no triumph, just relief. The kind that comes when you stop holding your breath without realizing you were. I didn't rush into anything new. Peace has a learning curve. But I did start living again in small ways. Cooking real meals, sleeping through the night, laughing without checking myself. One evening at a charity fundraiser for the hospital, I met someone unexpected. No drama, no history, just ease. We talked about ordinary things, and it felt extraordinary because nothing hurt. Sometimes people ask if I regret how it all ended. I don't. The marriage ended the moment she chose someone else and expected me to stand still. Everything after that was just paperwork catching up to reality. I didn't win anything. I didn't lose everything either. I kept my daughter's trust. I kept my integrity. I kept my life intact when it would have been easier to let it burn. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. Silence isn't weakness. Walking away isn't surrender. And love that requires you to shrink so someone else can feel comfortable isn't love at all. The house is quiet again sometimes, but it's a different kind of quiet now. Not empty, not tense, just calm. And that calm cost me less than staying would have. That chapter is closed, and I'm not looking back.